Hey guys, it's Alec Torelli. Welcome back to Conscious Poker, and this is the story of how a legendary Italian economist shaped my poker career. So I've been playing poker 20 years now, and when I first started, I was obsessed with the game. All I wanted to do was play poker. So the number one desire in my life, in all of my free time, even not my free time, even when I was in school, I was in high school when I started playing at 16, I just wanted to play. And so I just craved the game so much, and I would play and play and play and play and play. And this is like the way that I came up during my first, I would say 5 years of poker. I mean, I took my first break when I was 19. I just was one of the biggest winners online on full tilt poker. And I took a week off to go take a backpacking trip through the Gold Coast of Australia with a friend of mine that I had met there. That was like the first week I had off in 3 years. Was that I started playing poker. I was just obsessed with the game. It wasn't until maybe I was like 22, 23, 24 when I kind of sold everything I owned and moved to Italy that I would try and strike a little bit more balance in my poker journey. So I learned, and this is kind of through collective psychology and what people in poker generally think, and like a very like mathematical oriented approach. People look at things in poker like ROI, hourly rate, win rate, big blind per 100, measurements of their progress in poker. And so because of this, the way that people generally look at poker is like, the more hours that you play, the better you're going to do. The more hours you play, the more you're going to win. And the caveat to that people aren't talking about is that you have to play your absolute best poker for all of those hours in order for that sentence to be true. And so people don't usually take that approach. They just kind of blindly, follow the idea that like, I'm going to try and play as many hours as possible at all costs. And so it's that at all costs that I'd like to talk about today. And so in the beginning of my career, this strategy worked. Why did this strategy work in the beginning of my career? It worked for the first 3, 4, 5 years because if I measured like my emotion or my energy or my desire, poker was always the number one thing on my list that I wanted to do. So if I had a given day with no obligations, no responsibilities, and nothing on my calendar, what would I choose voluntarily to do? It would be poker. It'd be the number one thing I would choose to do. So because of that, this approach of playing as many hours as possible worked really, really well. But what happens with a lot of poker players, and I've seen this with hundreds of clients, students, and people in our programs, is that there comes a point where poker is not necessarily the number one thing, because there's a certain amount of time that people can play, and if they cross that threshold, they'll get burnt out. And so burnout is a very common thing in poker. And this happens when people, like clients that go to Vegas for the WSOP, very common, it's coming up. And so they'll take a trip to Vegas and they'll have this like idea of, I want to play as many events as possible, as many cash games as possible. I want to maximize my ROI, my time and my energy, like while I'm there. And so it's easy to neglect the personal side, the health, the wellness, going outside, friends, doing other things, having balance. And so the mind can only focus on a game like poker for so long before it starts to perform suboptimally. And you see this, it's so weird that this is not like common in poker. Like if the GTO bots are going to hate me for this. Think about other athletes, right? Just digress for a second to think about like another sport, like, basketball. I mean, imagine a basketball player was like, hey, I'm just going to play the most amount of hours possible in basketball to be the best player. It's like, you can't do that because your body has a physical limit and you need rest, right? Even within a construct of a 48-minute basketball game, the best players aren't playing all 48 minutes. They almost never do that. They rest in between, right? So why do we not apply this approach to a mental game like poker? People just assume that they can perform at this elite, high-level, concentrated place on a micro level, too many hours within a given day, but on a macro level, too many days within a given month. And so what I learned the hard way, and I've talked about this in past videos, poker no longer became the number one thing I wanted to do necessarily on a daily basis. I forced the idea that I had to play more, I had to recover, I had to win more. Games were so good, I had to play, I had to get my hours in. I went on $1 million downswing when I was 20, and I had to learn the hard way that quality over quantity is a huge component. And the only thing that really matters is engineering, number one, and number two, playing with self-awareness when you feel like poker's the number one thing you want to do with your day, with your time, with your life, with your energy, and only playing during that moment. So this means on a micro level, quitting a game if your energy changes throughout the game where you no longer feel like playing. So you might have started the session where poker was your number one desire, but throughout the session in a 4, 5, 6 hour window, 10 hour window, maybe you no longer feel like playing. Maybe the game is challenging to you in a certain way. Maybe you're up a lot, maybe you're down a lot, maybe something else happened in your life. And on a macro level, it means assessing on a daily basis or a weekly basis, monthly basis, or even whether or not to go take a poker trip, whether or not you actually want to do that. And so what I learned the hard way was that quality mattered a lot more than quantity. And it's so funny because I read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, huge legend. It really changed the way I think about everything. Early on in my career, I was 19 years old living in Australia. And he talked about this principle called the 80-20 principle from Vilfredo Pareto, who's an Italian economist early in the 1900s, who observed that 80% of the land in Italy, he was an Italian economist, so 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. And then over time, this became the 80-20 approach called the Paro Principle, where it extrapolated this idea that 80% of the output comes from 20% of the input, or 80% of the benefit comes from 20% of the causes. And so this 80-20 approach applies to a lot of things in life. 80% of the wealth is owned by 20% of the people. It's actually maybe even more than that, but the idea of this disparity between input and output is huge. It's 80-20, it's not 1-to-1 like most people think. So in poker, people are still stuck in this idea of 1-to-1. So I've learned the hard way how important it is to apply this 80-20 approach to my poker journey. Whether it's not going to events I don't feel like, or not playing certain sessions, or quitting a certain session when I don't feel like playing. It's about understanding what's called the power law, which is based on the Pareto principle, that there's an unequal distribution of outcomes, and that most of the outputs come from very few of the inputs. And so when I think about that in the context of my career, it's really reshaped the way I approach poker in general. It's reshaped the things I've approached, from game selection, from saying, look, is this an opportunity that's slightly plus EV with high variance? Sure. Technically, from a book standpoint, you're supposed to take that opportunity because it's plus EV. It doesn't matter. It's still worth taking. But I don't look at things like that anymore. I look at things like, is this a great opportunity that I can't miss? So it's about having a different framework for what opportunities you even pursue in the first place. Having a different framework for what is the threshold where an opportunity is worth your time, because your time has an opportunity cost. There's an hourly rate to your time. There's an opportunity cost to your time for giving your energy. Poker takes a lot of energy, and it takes time to recharge that energy. I only want to play when I could dedicate 100% of my energy to poker, and I feel like I could be in my absolute peak performance top mode. And so I'm thinking about, okay, I can't dedicate that to 100% of my time. I can't do that level 60 hours a week, all week, 50 weeks a year. It's just not possible for that level of output. So how do I find those 20% of opportunities that are going to produce me the most amount of results? Whether it's, game selection on a micro level, whether it's quitting a session in a certain day so I could play again tomorrow when it's not too late and I can get a good night's sleep and still get up and meditate and work out and exercise and play my best the next day, leaving a trip early, or, figuring out which tournaments are best to play during a certain series where I'm not playing every single tournament, I'm playing only the top 20%. So I've applied this to many facets of my poker career. I've also do this with studying as well, and when I'm coaching clients. So for example, when someone comes to me and they want to work on poker, or when I want to work on my own poker game, it's I could spend 40 hours a week studying, or I could spend 5-7 hours a week studying, and I could focus on the 1 or 2 or 3 things that I need to work on the most that are going to produce disproportionate returns on my game. So what are the 1 or 2 things that I could work on the most? For tournaments, it might be ICM. It might be, final table strategy, or deep in the money strategy, or working with a big stack or navigating mid stacks in the late stages of tournaments, where most of the people end up struggling. The blinds go up and then they force themselves into a push fold spot. Then they bust the tournament because they don't know how to navigate the late stages of a tournament. So when I work with clients, I find, and I do, we do poker assessments. I look through every single hand they play during their session, and I figure out what are the 1 or 2 or 3 leaks they have that are causing them most of their losses, and how do we turn those things around? So you could apply this approach to your study game as well. What I'm saying is that what if you could only play when you're in that top 20% category? So what if you could engineer your poker sessions to feel like you were only going to play if you could likely achieve, or give yourself the best chance of achieving? Obviously there's randomness, there's luck, but what if you could only play poker, or what if you could engineer your situation to only play when you are feeling like you're in that top 20%, right? So you could game select, right? That's one thing you could do. You could select the top 20% of games or tournaments or opportunities or rebuys or whatever it is in poker. You could select the top 20% of opportunities that are going to produce 80% of the results. You don't feel like necessarily playing today, but you feel like you have to, you should, you probably want to. If you could somehow measure independently your emotion or your energy or your intention or how you're feeling before a session, and then extrapolate that to understand the results from that session, you would probably find that this 80-20 principle applies. So the things that stuck with me throughout this, and learning from this Italian economist and learning this 80-20 approach, applying it to poker, and I had to do this the hard way. I won and lost a lot of money early in my career before I really started to value the quality over quantity approach. Now I'm like ruthless at this point. Like if I don't feel like playing for any reason, I've just learned to let go. Like I'm not trying to force it. I'm not trying to judge it. I'm not trying to feel guilty about it. I'm just saying, you know what? I don't feel like it. I'm just going to quit. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go to this event. I'm not going to play this event. I'm not going to do this thing. I'm not going to pursue this opportunity. I'm just like, this is not part of my top 20%. And this does a couple things. Number one is it focuses on giving you the best chance of winning, right? So if you're only playing when you're in that top 20%, most likely you're going to have a good result. Number two, when you don't have a good result, because I'm not going to pretend like you're never going to lose. You're still going to lose. You're still going to have bad days. You're still going to get wrecked. You're still going to get unlucky. You're still probably going to make mistakes. So all those things are going to happen. But when it does happen, your recovery time is a lot faster because you know internally that you made the right bet. You made the right decision to stay in the game or to play the game or to pursue the opportunity or to play the tournament or to rebuy in the tournament or to rebuy in the cash game or to stay in the session longer than you normally do or to double down and play the next day even after you lost because your intention, your energy, your focus was there. You were in the top 20%. And so it makes the loss easier to handle and it makes this recovery time faster because you don't go to this vicious cycle or this downswing mindset of I'm stuck, I'm losing, I'm lacking confidence, I'm not playing well, and you're frustrated, you're on tilt. You don't feel those emotions because you know that you're absolutely sure that playing was the right decision. So it has multiple compounding effects that are sort of harder to measure, and they go beyond this scope of playing as many hours as possible to achieve the best results. Now, this is even more true as you move up in stakes. So as you're playing bigger games, quality matters so much more, right? If you're playing 2-5 and your goal is to make 5K a month, you have to put in a certain number of hours just because of the math of making 5K a month at 2-5 is such that you need to play quite a few hours in order to achieve that hourly rate. So you're going to have to, pick your quality hours, but you're going to have to work on the engineering side of things to get yourself in that top peak state of performance so that every, session is engineered to you feeling your best way possible. And I talk about this. I'll give you a resource for this at the end, but I talk about this a lot in other videos, like how to engineer yourself to be in the best peak state of performance possible. So you're gonna have to work more on that engineering side to feel like more and more sessions are part of that elite percent where you're in peak performance mode. But as you move up in stakes, so let's say you're playing 5, 10, 10, 20, 25, 50, 50, 100, no limit, or a 5K or a 10K tournament. If you're playing 50, 100, no limit, you don't need to play, hundreds of 100 hours a week, because if you win, like, let's say you play 7 sessions a month and you win 5 and lose 2. You're going to have a great month. You might win $40,000 a month. You win 3 buy-ins in a 50-100 game at the end of the month. You're up $30,000. So like, it depends on what your financial goals are. It depends on what your income goals are. But you don't need to win. You don't need to play that many hours necessarily if your hours are high quality and you're booking wins consistently because you're in your absolute A-game zone. Your edge is bigger when you're in this A-game zone. So your hourly rate is higher. Your variance is lower. And so if you can focus on that quality approach, you don't need to put in as many hours as you would if you're playing smaller stakes where to make the same income, you have to put in more hours. So I think this quality approach is something that is like an evolution that I've had in my poker career as I'm playing bigger and bigger games. It matters more and more that every session is a great opportunity that is, absolutely worth pursuing. How do you do this 80-20 approach? How do you apply it? Well, first of all, think about the things that you do to get yourself ready for those sessions that put you in the top 20%. So this is the scope of your overall life, right? For most people, poker is not their number one thing. It's the number 2 thing they do in their life. Their job, their business is their number 1, or maybe even it's number 3. Obviously, if they have family, that's their number 1, and then job, business is number 2. So poker is probably their biggest hobby. Let's say it's a number 3 thing in their life. So how do you make sure the other 2 things in your life are in order so that when it's time to dedicate all of your energy to this hobby, which again is your number 3 activity in your life, how do you make sure that all of your energy can go into that in such a place that you're coming from a place of positivity, you're coming from a place of an inspiration, excitement, and you're positively moving things forward on your poker journey. So what are the things you can do, like on the diet side, the health side, the wellness side, the sleep, the clearing off your plate so you don't have things in your head, the meditation, like the visualization, like whatever it is you can do to engineer those top peak sessions. What is it about the bankroll side of things where you're absolutely comfortable playing the games that you're playing? How about your business plan? How well is it sorted out for you to play these games where you're comfortable playing in them, you're sufficiently bankrolled, you can handle the variance, you're ready mentally. So there's so many things that could be done to engineer this side of things where you're focused on achieving those great results from a small percentage of your sessions. And then it's just thinking about how to make those small percentage of the sessions the default. So it's like in a sport where you see athletes have great days, but the best athletes have a lot of great days. They almost always perform their best. So the engineering side of things is getting a great day to be the default. And then it's also being aware of, poker, we get to choose whether we play or not. Like athletes, it's quite punitive. Like Sunday comes up, it's football day. If you feel like playing, if you don't feel like playing, you have a problem in your personal life, you have a problem with the family, it doesn't matter. You have to show up on Sunday on that football field and be in peak performance mode. In poker, it's a little bit more flexible. We can choose which games and tournaments and opportunities and business trips and poker trips that we take. So it's a little bit more flexible, and we can use this to our advantage to engineer and to focus on the best opportunities in poker. So if you like this content, you'd like more help with this, we do have a Poker Business Accelerator program. I'm really proud of this program and I'm really excited for it. It's the only thing like it on the market. So most things in poker focus on strategy, focus on how to be better at playing the game of poker, the technical side of things, strategy, ranges, game theory, that sort of thing. This program does focus on those things as well, but it doubles down on the intangible side of things. So bankroll management mindset, building a solid poker business, using the 80-20 approach to help engineer your poker business to be the most successful thing possible, how to achieve your poker goals, when to move up and down in stakes, setting stop losses, peak performance, mastering the mental game, tilt control, focus, discipline, how to study the game of poker. So it focuses on not just how to be better at playing poker, but how to be a better poker player. And so this is something that I think is super important, and we've seen a lot of success studies with our clients as well. Kevin went from making $30 an hour to $120 an hour using our program. Check this out.
I joined Alec's Academy because I wanted to become better, and I wanted to find out what my true leaks were. And when I joined, I did find out what those were. Once I plugged up those leaks, it's just I've just been skyrocketing. I was making about like $20, maybe $30 an hour. My hourly rate jumped. It was incredible. Like now I'm averaging somewhere between $100 and $120 an hour. It's like, that's insane.
To learn more about our Poker Business Accelerator, click on the link in the description below. Depending on when you're watching this, we have a promotion going on for the next 48 hours, and I'm really excited about this program and to help serve more people on their poker journey. If you have questions about this or anything poker related, be sure to leave me a comment and below. I read all of them. I'm happy to respond and happy to help you guys on your poker journey as well. Subscribe and like, more awesome content is coming. I hope this video served you. The key takeaway, find something you're gonna do where you're gonna focus on the 20% of inputs that produce 80% of the results, whether it's with us through our poker business program or on your own. I hope that this helps you in some way and takes that next step on your poker journey. All right, guys, I'm Alec Torelli. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.